Welcome. This is the first book review in my YouTube series. Today I'm going to be reviewing this book, Corelli's Mandolin, by Louis de Bernieres, who is an English author. Book was written in 1994 and is a historical fiction romance. I'll talk a little bit about the plot of the book. I'll go into some of the things I liked about the book, some of the things I did not like about the book, and then I'll finish off by talking about who I would recommend this book for, other books that it reminded me of, and I'm going to speak about the book for book review for next time. So, a brief overview of the plot. I'm not going to get into any spoilers here, but a general plot overview is that this book takes place before, during, and after World War II in a small Greek town on a Greek island called Cephalonia. And the plot revolves around 3 or 4, maybe 5 main characters, and then many of side or minor characters in this town. So the main characters of the book are the doctor of the town, the doctor's daughter, the doctor's daughter's betrothed, and the titular Captain Corelli, an Italian soldier who is occupying the island after the Italians have invaded. So what happens is the doctor's daughter is betrothed to a Greek fisherman. The fisherman goes off to fight to repel the Italian forces who are invading the islands. They repel the Italians. However, before they can completely get them out of Greece, the Germans then reinforce the Italian forces, and the Germans and Italians both jointly occupy the country of Greece. And the novel takes place during roughly about 40 years of this timeline. Most of it, the bulk of it, is during the Second World War. And it's really mostly about the romance triangle between the betrothed, the doctor's daughter, and Captain Corelli. So what did I like about the book? I thought the book was really well written. Wasn't fireworks going off on every page, but there are some very beautiful flourishes, and the author has a very good command of the language and does not leave room for a lot of interpretation, which I liked a lot. You kind of always knew where you were, what was going on, who the main characters in that particular chapter were, what they were up to. He also, the way the book is structured, it's probably about 40 or 50 short chapters, less than 10 pages. They do bounce around a little bit. Not every chapter is focused on this relationship, but the bulk of them are. It's kind of the main plot thread of the book that pushes the book forward. I thought all the characters, not only the side characters, not only the main characters, but also the side characters have an arc. Oftentimes they have a very dramatic character arc. They end up in a much different place than where they began. They're all really well thought out. Some of them just have 1 or 2 characteristics, but they're all easily identifiable fairly quickly. There's not a ton of side characters. There's probably only roughly 15, 20 named characters in the book, so everyone's pretty easy to keep track of. So I thought that was really well done. I liked the way that the author blended historical fiction and romance. Sometimes it's not always an easy thing to do, but I thought he did a really good job of doing that. Like I said, the structure, the short chapters really kind of punch you forward in the novel, which I liked a lot. Some things that I didn't like as much, even though the chapters are short, the book does seem to sag in the middle. Book clocks in at over 400 pages. My paperback edition did, at least. And, you definitely felt that maybe 30 or 40 pages less, would have really helped the book. There are some chapters that don't have to do with the main characters, and those chapters don't really add very much to the book other than some flavor. And I think while there is some of the better writing in the book, the more colorful writing is when the book breaks away from these characters, the main characters. I still think it may have been the place where I would have done some cutting, done some editing. I think the 400, maybe 380, 400-page version of this book would have been a little bit better. There is one character in particular whose arc struck me as not unbelievable. It was definitely a believable arc, and it was definitely... I understood why the author did what they did. There's a kind of a point in the A Song of Ice and Fire books where there's a main character who has to go off stage, so to speak, for a while for the book to make sense, for the pacing of the book to make sense. That happens here too, which I can't really fault the author for too much. What I will fault him for is the character up until that point, till the character kind of returns, is a fairly likable character, and after that point he's not. And so there seemed to be a pretty big change in his character that made him kind of unlikable, and it kind of resolved some dangling plot issues that there may be another way that he could have handled that a little bit better, in my opinion. Overall, though, I thought the book was really strong. It did remind me of some other stuff. When I was doing some research on the author is apparently a big fan of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and that does show in the writing. There is a touch of magical realism early on. It doesn't necessarily flow throughout the entire book, but there are definitely touches, and you do get a sense that is one of his major influences. That being said, you may compare this to a book like Love in the Time of Cholera, which is a much superior book. So if anyone has read that book, I don't know if I could recommend this particular book over that one. I think it would really depend on your love of history. One of the things that I didn't mention is I think the book does a beautiful job of painting the world of this small island, of this town, of these people. It's also a point in time, a point in history that's not covered necessarily as much. For me, at least, for an American audience, I can't speak to a time where I've read a work of art that is in Italian, German occupied Greece. So I thought that was actually really well done. I would recommend this book to anyone who does like a good romance, but maybe also someone who likes a historical fiction as well. I think if you dislike either one of those genres, I think it's going to be a hard book to read. But if you are someone who is open to that and is open to a book about war, not necessarily the main point is not really the battles. It doesn't necessarily get gory. There are some points in it towards the end that are a little bloody, but I would really think this would actually be a pretty good book for a senior in high school, a freshman in college, that kind of age range. Overall, like I said, I did enjoy it. I would recommend it to people who fit into those categories. It did remind me of Love in the Time of Cholera. Not as good, but it's difficult. It's one of those things where you're comparing one work to a greater work. It's really not necessarily fair to fault the author for that. It's maybe an unfair comparison to compare him to a master like that. But overall, I do recommend it. I would recommend it to anybody who's interested in reading about the author. I think it is a good book. And I did get an advanced copy of a book by Raymond E. Feist called King of Ashes. I actually won that off of Goodreads. So that is what I will be reviewing next time. I'd just like to say thank you. And if you're interested in the channel at all, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment below. All right, see you next time.